see it. It doesn't have a splitter on the side. You have to actually use it. Yeah, I guess you can do it. Too fair. It's too fair. It's a 10. Yeah. You're wrestling along a little bit. I guess I'm going to walk around with this. It's fine. I'll just, it's a clicker. Okay. It's fine. That's nice. You can do that. I don't know if we need it or not. Do you think it's a lot enough here for I can just look over and see the slide on. Hello, everyone. All right. Hey. Hi again. So I'm Mlem, M-L-E-M. It's the sound of a cat or a dog sticking their tongue out and licking. And I'm Derrick from the company. And I'm making a digital urn. I've worked for the Kennedy Space Center, Florida Lottery, the Marines, various technology projects. I'm an engineer by trade. And I am going to be talking about the future of American manufacturing as I see it. There's a lot of potential features for how this could go. But I'm using a technique in this project called fused deposition modeling. So it's 3D printing. You've got the 3D printers over there in Melrose Center. I have a bunch of them in my office. But basically, you build 3D objects up using plastic, and you can use this to build practically anything, whether it be a drone or a bust of Einstein or an urn, in my case. So it has a number of advantages over other techniques that Americans use and Chinese use as well. So typically, you use stamp molds in traditional manufacturing, but the really big benefit here with this technique is that the printers themselves are very cheap to get started. If you were to buy a mold, for example, a molding technique, that's in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, typically $500,000. And then for these, you're spending $200 for a beginner, up to $1,000 for a really good one for making something yourself like what I do, or $5K if you need tons of colors and mixing multiple plastics together all in the same unit. For me, it takes about one printer to make an urn every 2 days. So the way that these types of companies work is you buy more printers as you need to scale. So let's say, for example, I've got a customer order coming in. If they're okay with waiting a week, I don't need to buy that many printers. But if I get a ton of orders at once, I need to buy a whole warehouse of these things, right? And just run them all at the same time. So you scale horizontally. So instead of having one really expensive molding machine, which is typically how it's been done in the past, you instead just keep scaling horizontally as you get more customers. So for me, if you ever wanted to get into this technique and start using it yourself to build a product, they can make basically anything. But there's a lot of companies trying to make these types of tools and sell them to the public. The general recommendation is you look at a company called Prusa. They're European and American made, so the highest quality. They're more expensive, but if they break, you can fix them. And then you've got your Chinese competitor, Bamboo. They're the most popular of the Chinese printers, and they give you a lower cost, and they're best for hobbyists because you're not going to run it that often. So if it breaks, just buy another one, right? Different ways of doing things. For businesses, you typically want to be able to repair what you own, right? Because if you're going to go down, that means you're not making money, right? So you got to be able to repair it. One of the other things that this technique as an engineer requires is that you're self-reliant. You have to be able to be comfortable with fixing things. There's a lot of engineering challenges that go into making something out of nothing. So the printer does a lot of the heavy lifting for you when you're designing models and designing projects, but you still have to be willing to Google everything and learn it. It doesn't matter what the manufacturer says about it being easy and out of the box. That is true if you're using something to print a toy that somebody's already made for you, like a tiny boat or a tiny little figurine. That stuff is easy, it's out of the box, but when you start making your own stuff with CAD, you really got to be like an engineered mindset to make things. Other piece of advice, if you want to get into this and use it for your own projects or your own businesses, learn FreeCAD and Blender. So FreeCAD is open source, free, and so is Blender as well. They're both fantastic, and they're completely free forever. You don't have to pay for extremely expensive software licenses to get into this, as which totally lowers your initial startup costs. At that point, you just need a printer, right, and an idea, which the idea is the hardest part, frankly, for making a business. And that leads right into it. So if you're going to make something like I did, choose a niche, something that you know that isn't already being targeted in the market. Every single startup business venture has exactly the same problem of, do people even want it, and is it something that I can make, right, with your capabilities? But you have to choose niche. I chose video urns, right? Nobody was making video urns. Fantastic, right? I can go get a utility patent on that thing and make those things all day long. But that's the problem with the main benefit and problem with 3D printing is, since you can make anything, what the heck do you make, right? You'll see a lot of people on maker fairs and at garage sales and whatnot with booths like selling articulated dragons and toys. You might have seen these already. And these are models that are being purchased from a designer. So that designer makes a decent amount of money. The person that makes those articulated dragons that are very popular right now makes about $100K per month. So it's a very lucrative thing, but they're literally the most popular one doing it. All those farmers selling those toys are not making that amount of money, right? Because everyone can buy them from anywhere, right? So where is this industry heading, right? There's a lot of possibilities of what could happen. But what I'm seeing currently is that we have a number of companies that are starting to do 3D farms themselves. So typically the way these farmers work, like myself, I guess I consider myself a farmer, I have 6 of these things, is that you choose a niche, right, and you make products for yourself, and then anytime your printers aren't running, you try to sell the printer time to somebody else locally, right, so that way you're still making money. That's typically the way it works. These farmers are getting to be more and more popular because if you're doing a startup now in America, why wouldn't you choose the technique, right? It's so much cheaper. You're on a completely different scale of startup cost, so almost no one's going to choose to go for a mold right away. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to spend $500,000 for an idea that may not even work. So where I see this going is more and more mega farms, right? So you have consolidation, right? A company like Slant 3D is already trying to do this. Their farm is the biggest in the world, and they've got probably 100,000 printers. So they're doing a different technique and trying to sell a service where you make something as a designer, and then you send a file to them as code so that they don't get the original file, and then they print it for you and ship it to your customer, right? So they deal with the distribution system, right, for all these 3D printed projects instead. That makes sense if you're doing something that doesn't have electronic components or customization per customer. So if you're selling like, there's one person that's making a stress ball for people, and you squeeze it, it's supposed to help it with kick you back into your senses, basically. It's for people with disabilities. That's great. If you made a mold for that, it would cost a lot of money to get started, and it's a niche product. But you could typically send that to Slant, for example, that mega farm, and get like 10,000 of the prints you could blow up on TikTok, and you could actually fulfill the orders, right? You couldn't have done that had you required a mold. It would have been way too expensive, and it would have taken 6 months to get here from overseas. It would have been impossible. The next thing I can see, even for small-time farmers, is automation. So if you do have a niche that you're successful in, what do you do then, right? Well, you can't be there when when you're asleep. So you can either hire humans or you can automate the printer to keep going. So what I'm seeing a number of different companies do is accessories for Prusa and bamboo, is they're building these automation techniques. Like this one's called the Ox technique. It just puts plates behind it, and then when one print finishes on the plate, it pushes that plate out, new plate starts, right? So when you get it in the morning, you just have to add the new plates. You clean the plates up, keep the printer going, feed it more filament, keep your printer happy, right? And it just keeps going for a long, long time. If you're doing something like a Prusa that's meant to actually be in a farm, it's going to last for weeks before you have to go into repairs. Typically these things, you shut them off about every week for a minor repair and every month for a major repair. And that just means that you're tinkering with it for about like 20, 30 minutes at a time. But you do that for all your printers. So you go in a cycle of upkeep. Another big thing I can see happening, especially with the administration that we've landed ourselves with, is that buy locally, right? I mean, we've all heard about tariffs, so I've seen them. I know that right now there's the idea of a 25% tariff from European to America. So that means that there's a higher percentage chance of people building things locally and then shipping them locally. But one of the other benefits, because these things appear out of nowhere, right? These are objects appearing in someone's printer with farms, is I can definitely see the idea of I make something here, and I work with a farmer in a different part of the country to do the printing for me, and then ship it to a local customer. rather than me paying the shipping cost from Florida over across to a different country or to a different part of this country that would be too expensive, right, to pay for shipping costs. Because you don't need to be a warehouse. You know, if you have a farm, that is a warehouse. It just the objects appear in front of you every morning, and then you take them and put them in a box and you ship them. So it kind of flips the model on its head of you having a warehouse of stuff from China. So yeah. Tariffs and trade wars are going to make this probably just expedite if people start getting angry at each other, right, when it comes to shipping. Luckily, in America, we do have a number of filament manufacturers and printer manufacturers. So Prusa can do everything in Europe and in the United States. They have both. So even if something really bad happens and you can't get printers for cheap from China, for example, we already have American versions of those things. They are more expensive, but they're also higher quality at the same time. So it's a nice trade-off. Other thing that can easily happen is legislation. So because you can make anything and anyone can make anything, that obviously means you can make things that certain governments wouldn't want you to have, right? You know, drones, right? We saw DJI, which was a large drone manufacturer out of China. They were making not 3D printed drones, molded, but they got banned in America because they were sending data over to China, right? And our government didn't like that. But what happened? We saw what was happening in the Ukrainian war, right? They're using drones like crazy. Instead of fighting hand to hand or like you know, a line of sight with guns, most of their teams are fighting using drones. So drone pilots are the primary way of combating in that war right now. So I can definitely see that even if it's not in the United States, but in other countries, legislation coming down to try to clamp down on that because you're able to make weapons. Guns, you know, we've heard of that before, 3D printed guns. If I'm not mistaken, the healthcare CEO that died, right, the one that was shot in the street, that one died because the assassin used a 3D printed gun, right? So you can definitely see, like, if a politician gets their hands on this idea and really sell it, they could try to put legislation down and clamp down who can own these printers. The good news is it'd be really hard to stop because you just build a printer. Printers can make more printers at the end of the day, so it'd be unlikely to work, but you can see that being try to be a political win. The other thing is with China, right? So a number of the cheaper printers that have become very popular in the last like 2-3 years are from bamboo, and they're from China. So if things get clamped down between the United States and China for whatever reason, choose any of the reasons that could happen, then that could get more expensive, where you can get locked out, where your printer is still working, but then can't be serviced for repairs in the future, right? So it's one of the potential things that could happen. The other thing is something that I worked on previously. It's called PHA. So it's a type of plastic that a number of my engineering friends are working on that's biodegradable, and it's safe and doesn't cause cancer. You can technically eat it. I don't know why you would eat plastic, but you could. It wouldn't kill you. I mean, I guess it going down your throat would kill you, but you know, it wouldn't be because the plastic is giving you cancer, which is amazing. So you could technically use this for making like products that you have to be around, like food safe, right? Or you're just worried about microplastics getting into your bloodstream or getting into the ocean. This solves that, and it's stronger than current plastic. So it's being experimented with. Last time I worked with my friends on it, we could only get it to print when I threw my printer into a freezer. So I took my 3D printer, put it in a freezer, got to 1 degree Celsius, it printed, and it printed beautifully. No one's going to buy a warehouse full of freezers and stick printers in them. That's way too expensive to run the refrigeration for that. For a product that's harder to sell because, you know, how many American customers are going to care that something's biodegradable or green, right? You can just put a tree on the package and people will think that it's biodegradable and green. That's way easier just to lie about it, frankly, than to actually do the good work. So, yeah, definitely a number of possible futures for 3D printing and American manufacturing. I don't think this is going to replace molds, right? Molds are typically best when you have to make 500,000 of something or more quickly. So there's definitely, like, you know, forks, you know, straws. You're not going to replace that with a 3D printer because they're slower. This is more for specialized products or products that you can only do through this technique, right? Or would have been too expensive as starting to do. So it's going to live in a happy, like it has been, it's going to live in a happy medium between molding and this. But this will replace most products, I would assume, that have any amount of uniqueness to them. But yeah, I'm going to open up to the questions and answers. And once you ask something, if nobody can hear, I'll try to repeat it. Go ahead.
How close are we, or what are the next steps towards the Star Trek replicator?
That is an interesting question. I've seen some developers working on food. So the easiest one to accomplish has been done so far has been with chocolate. So there's a chocolate 3D printer that you can buy. It works exactly like a normal person printer, right? You instead of printing plastic, you're printing chocolate, but chocolate is chocolate. It doesn't want to behave because it's chocolate. The good news is that when you screw up, instead of throwing away plastic, you get to eat it. So that's kind of fun. I've seen some chocolatiers try to use these, and like, for example, because it's 3D printed, you can print like a circle, for example, go up and up and up, and then you have a cavity and you fill it with certain things, right? So you can make like a sugar bomb. That's cool. That would be a lot harder to do if it's a mold, because then you have a molding process, you have to fill the mold up with the goo, the delicious sugary goo. There's cool things you can do with it. I don't know if it's going to replace anything, because chocolate is a commodity, so you would have to like make a lot of it to make any money, right? So why, right? There's a lot of things where you can do this technology that are like, it's cool that you can do it as an engineer, but then is there even a market for it, right? So, yes?
You mentioned the video. You mentioned the video component of your earns. What does that look like?
So it's a Raspberry Pi Zero, and then an LCD screen. So it runs off of a USB. I had actually part of the survey that I'm asking people to do is like, hey, do you want to have an app, right, to update the photos, videos? That sounds cool, but since it's an earn, it's kind of unnecessary, because unfortunately, once your pet has passed away, you're not going to have more photos and videos. And at that point, if you really need to update it, I could just offer a service. I'll do it for you as part of the inbuilt cost, or if you have to lower the initial cost, that becomes a special $25 fee or something. I can figure something out. But I'm a developer. I know how expensive it is to make apps. It is extremely expensive, right? So I think it's probably fine that it just plug in with USB. And most customers that I can imagine never interacting with don't know how to make a video, right? If you gave me a bunch of photos, a backpack or something, or off your phone, they wouldn't be able to convert it into a video file anyways. I would still have to do that for them, make it look pretty and make it look good. So it's part of it's kind of benefiting that I'm selling a niche product that's higher quality, because I can take care of that for the customer. So I'm hoping for my own sake that that is good enough.
So one of the slides I mentioned something about the legislation behind 3D printers, and the
Yes.
one that's kind of scary is being able to print weapons.
Yeah.
So ultimately, all that is you have a file on your computer, and that's how you print like a frame of a pistol or something like that.
Yes.
Like, how exactly would a government be able to keep that from falling into the wrong hands? Because theoretically, you could just 3D scan a frame and there you have it.
So the way it's being proposed so far is that only American manufacturers would be able to sell 3D printers if you were buying the components necessary to build like a boron printer, which is like self-made. They would track those components and put you on a list, basically. Then from there, you either have to basically obtain a license to print the guns, right? So you're being tracked that you're making weapons. But if not, if you're using a consumer or business level printer like a Prusa, from there, they would basically, every G-code file you generate, the thing that tells the printer where to go, what to do, scan it through an AI, which isn't accurate, but whatever, and have it check to see if something looks like a gun. So that's basically is like hand-wavy. We're going to use AI to solve that en masse and check everyone's files to make sure they're not printing weapons. You won't get everyone that way, but I could imagine you could get a certain number of weapons manufacturers doing this. Because most people doing illegal things aren't that smart. So, and not going to have that many things to work around it. But of course, anybody that would figure it out would just work around this. You can't ultimately prevent this. It'd be like saying like, oh, I'm going to regulate a knife, like as a concept. Good luck. It's not going to be easy. But they're going to try because it's a political win. It's easy to say, yeah, you should be able to print weapons. I agree with that. But, or at least you should be tracked somewhere or have a license. Whatever, right? Actually making that is not really the job of the politician. It's the job of the people trying to make that into a rule or effect and self-regulate. So, yeah. Any more? No? Okay. You guys have been a great audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was awesome, Derrick.
Thanks.
All right, so we are moving to our next thought leader talk. I'm glad to see he has a very large following. That's really nice. Michael Rosario is one of the organizers with Google Dev Group. He's going to be talking about complex things. They're all in the world of programming. I don't have my notes in front of me, sadly. I'm so sorry. But Michael will definitely give you the topic that he is speaking about while they're figuring it out. And hopefully, you'll all have time. He has 30 minutes to be able to share his. So if you have questions, he's built that into that time frame.
Check. Good morning, everyone. So it's such a great time to be with you today. My name is Michael Rosario. I help lead the Google Development Group of Central Florida. And today we're going to talk about like Agile engineering, how to go faster with Pragmatic AI. So how many people are developers in this audience? All the devs are over there, plus a little bit, okay. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully you're going to get something out of this regardless of who you are, because we're talking about the big concepts of planning and testing, which are, I think, under-discussed topics. And this will be kind of like some of the journeys I've kind of been on with me and my team. You can connect with me at innovativeteams.net on my blog, and we do have like a few articles on there kind of targeting Unity devs. A little bit about me just from a human being point of view. Married to a beautiful a professor of biology, and her name is Sarah, and we have a very conflicted relationship at times. So she's a biologist and I'm a computer scientist. And I talk about like how computer scientists like use biological stuff like neural networks and genetic algorithms to crossover, and she's like, I hate you. I'm like, you guys like take really bad abstractions from biology and then you make more money than me. It's not fair. It's still only not fair. Anyway, so like our kids are equally like conflicted too because of this conflict we have. But they're beautiful like human beings. And I feel like, so I'm pro like AI. My kids are like very reserved. So it's kind of cool. But as a family, we love like engaging in music. We probably play way too much Minecraft together, so that's a little bit about us and us as a gaming family. I lead the Google Development Group of Central Florida with Kendrick. Kendrick, can you stand up? So we're all about like helping people go to the next level wherever you are in your journey. And so whether you're just kind of starting out, maybe you're looking to connect with others who are also wanting to do a startup or something like that. So I really appreciate the Indienomicon and Isabella and her community for allowing us to kind of partner with them, because very much like we want to really create success for you. You can connect with us at googledevcentralflorida.com. And we have a pretty friendly Discord that you can jump on, and we're happy to help you and whatnot. And a lot of times, we can kind of connect you to maybe thought leaders inside of Google if you have kind of like concerns about like, hey, Android is acting weird and my Quest headset in this particular way, and I want to yell at someone in Google. We can help you make that happen, potentially. So I'm also an engineering manager at Design Interactive. I'm in charge of cloud and web infrastructure. So we are really excited about empowering people with innovative technology. whether that's kind of like with augmented virtual reality experiences. This product is focused on the trucking maintenance space, but we also do a lot around human performance. And a general theme that we're looking at is, hey, so I got a bunch of content in my learning management system, and I have a learner DNA. There's a certain set of things that I'm really good at. There's certain things that I'm passionate about learning about. And so we're doing a lot of thinking around using AI for adaptive learning. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, we have open positions in machine learning and data infrastructure, basically back-end development. We'd love to talk to you. So come see me afterwards if you're interested in that. You can learn more at designinteractive.net. So connecting it to like the general story of what today is about, really this event is about helping game developers be successful in their venture. And the common ground that we all stand on is like we're going through this kind of build, measure, learn loop. We call this Agile, but like this is also called the lean startup cycle. And really today we hope that you come away with a few concepts of how you can plan more effectively using AI and kind of test and whatnot. So for those who are not familiar with Agile, we're going to just lean into two aspects of the Agile Manifesto. First, that people matter more than the tool, right? We can all probably agree that AI is exciting, but at the end of the day, it is a tool. And it's our job as a community to make sure that we value people over all of our tools and all the time. Agile also has kind of an action-oriented mindset of producing working product over comprehensive documentation. Growing up, I was on team, Star Trek, and that really captured my imagination, and it seems to be like one of those background narratives that plays in my head as we're making things. So in Star Trek Next Generation, Captain Picard occasionally takes his team out to the holodeck, to the simulated cool environment, and they enjoy a story together. In this episode, the Commander Data is like Sherlock Holmes, and they encounter this kind of character Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes, and they do battle with him. And Moriarty is like this AI character. So here we are in times with ChatGPT, we can start building this stuff. This used to be really hard to create a simulated Sherlock Holmes. It used to be hard to make a simulated Moriarty, but it's easier. At least we have some of the linguistic pieces maybe more down. So I find that exciting. So that led me to kind of just thinking about how do I want to apply this to my own life. Crystal Croto is like one of my favorite business coaches, leaders, and highly recommend them. But I started concretely thinking hey, maybe I can just try if I could take him out for coffee, what would I ask him? Maybe I can try building a bot of Crystal Croto, He has all his podcasts, 400 or so online. So I started downloading all of his podcasts. I transcribed them all, put them into text files. So I did that with technology called Whisper CPP, and so you can get the GitHub resources there if you want to check that out. But basically, got all of the text files from every podcast that you had, and connected with a technology called LangChain to start building this artificial intelligent Crystal Croto. So LangChain, in my view, is the Swiss Army knife of large language model stuff. To a certain extent, it allows us to explore the Gemini ecosystem that we do in the Google ecosystem. It allows us to talk to OpenAI, Anthropic, your Ollama, your local language models. It talks to all of those things, but it has the batteries included for a bunch of other things. So, a lot of people need a vector database. It connects to all of them. You're going to chop documents into smaller pieces. It does that. It makes waffles. It has all the things that you could ever want. So what started happening in building this thing is I had all these text files and I then would chop them into smaller pieces and put them into a database. So that's technically pretty straightforward, but there were subtle new ideas that came up. Oh wait, there's this thing called an embedding. So I have to take this little content thing and connect an embedding to it. So what is an embedding? An embedding in machine learning terms is like a digital fingerprint that says what's in the box of the string. So if this is about life coaching or something like that, that vector, that very long vector, is going to be represented in a certain way. The things that are about Unity development are going to be another vector in a different string of numbers. So when I ask a question like, how do I achieve more life balance over here, that query gets turned into an embedding, and then we can use that embedding to ask the vector database, hey, what's the most similar stuff that's connected to this question? And maybe we pull the top 3, and then we use a large language model to summarize the answer. So all that we just described there is called in the industry retrieval augmented generation, and it's becoming just the meta pattern that everyone uses to chat with documents over your data. So this is what it looks like code-wise, right? So in this case, I'm using a Hugging Face embedding model. I'm iterating through a bunch of text files. I'm creating a document for each text file, splitting that into smaller parts, chopping that into by 1,000 tokens with some overlap, and then saving that to a vector database called PG Vector, because it's very popular in the Postgres world. And that kind of gives us the ability to, accomplish the vision of this whole picture here. So I have another program to test this out, so I can ask it some questions, like what are some of the recommendations for killing the leadership crazy cycle? That would be a phrase that Chris Lakota would say over and over again, and it actually answered in a tone that felt like him. All of these answers felt like him. It's like, oh, this is kind of cool. I just need to find coffee now, and that sort of thing. So what does that program look like? On line 14, we're instantiating a large language model. We're instantiating our embedding model. We're connecting to our vector database store, creating a retriever. On line 27, we have a prompt that it pretty much is saying in raw terms, only use the documents that you have in context. Please ignore what you know. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know. That's pretty much what that string kind of says. We then have a function for retrieval augmented generation using that retriever, some formatting, and the large language model, and we can kind of ask questions and have the bot answer them. So that's how I created my own personal and business coach, if you will. So I've been extending this kind of MVP to something bigger called Team Focus, and so I've currently indexed 5,000 podcasts around this, and it's definitely useful when I'm engaging with my team and they're asking a question, they're struggling with some kind of pattern or whatever, and I now have my own search tool that helps me find more nuanced content that helps them. So just show of hands in the audience, how many people are using AI in our developers? So that's, aligns with this data. It's about 64%. The developers are excited about AI. We're doing things like writing code, searching for answers, generating documentation, but today we're going to zero in on planning and testing. So I think the first shout out I wanted to give as far as a planning thing that's a little weird is a tool called Notebook LLM. How many people have used this before? Just curious. Okay, really cool tool because you can register for Notebook LLM through Google, upload a bunch of your documents to this thing. So I was learning about an open source adaptive learning tool or whatever here, and then I can ask it questions related to that document. So that's pretty ordinary. What sets this tool apart is this space up here, you can kind of actually generate like a podcast from all of that like stuff. Sounds weird, sounds science fiction-y, but it works. It sounds almost like an NPR podcast. So you literally have like two AIs talking to each other, bantering. They do very human, like us and that's interesting. All those like human mannerisms, they subtly capture, and they teach you the nuts and bolts of that. So in our work, where we're sometimes digging through very dense research papers or something like that, this is way more entertaining than reading the document exclusively. It gives us a really good Reader's Digest of what's being taught in kind of a playful way. So that's my first shout out on planning. Second one that's good for leaders is Otter.ai. So it's very important to try to connect with your clients, whether they're the product owner or whatnot. And so like being able to really focus on quality conversation with them while not being stressed out about like, did I miss a requirement? Did I miss a detail? I just delegate that to my AI, and it just kind of like, I can come back to it later and ask it questions about like, hey, what were the user stories I should be thinking about connected to this conversation, and it writes it all out. So a lot of the thinking behind this talk comes from this great book called The Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson. So he kind of called out a great concept about what great UX looks like. So, and sometimes for innovative organizations, we just look at the Figma file or the design file, and that's the top of the conversation. But great UX actually requires like thinking about the whole enchilada. Like, what is a database person actually? What does the database person need to be successful? That we call that information architecture. And many times, if you just leave things to product people and design people, there could be like a lot of like details that just aren't considered in making a full robust design. So in general, like I'm going to make the assertion that this is going to actually save you time and money. So like if we look at this is kind of a work from Construct, Steve McConnell, the cone of uncertainty. There's an argument that if you just kind of like take on a project early on and just say, yeah, I'll do that, and you just don't really look at the detail, you're going to be potentially 4 times wrong on your estimate, right? So the closer you can get to good user interfaces, more any form of decomposition, you're saving money. You're more confident in what you're planning. So you could reach for ChatGPT or your favorite LLM to draft out some user stories, right? That's pretty easy. Here I'm making a spades game using Blazor, and it's thinking through a bunch of things. And is it completely right? No, it isn't. But it at least gives me a first pass of helping me see around a corner that the client maybe isn't thinking about. It allows me to see farther than the product organization inherently can. So just assert that that's a cool thing. Tools like Anthropic were the first to actually start putting some visual context to this. So, design a database schema for a small conference or whatever. Did a pretty good job here. Attendees, rooms, speakers, sponsors. We could probably nitpick some details of this. Again, it gives me a first level decomposition that allows me to kind of maybe go back to my product person and say like, hey, do we think really through like our registration strategy in this context? Because like the AI kind of gave me a first pass, hopefully I'm better prepared for engaging with my client. The same thing for like a game developer, right? Being able to like quickly sketch out like a UML for a space shooter game. For the most part, this looks halfway decent. Again, it's a first draft. Do we trust the AI? All the time. Who trusts the AI all the time? No one should be raising their hand. Exactly, right? So not overselling this concept of trust the AI. It's just a first pass, right? as things progress, we'll see tools like UX Pilot, do better, like kind of like on UI design. I think that's an interesting thing that's kind of coming up. This was an interesting case study that I'll refer you to. It's from the Scrum Master Toolbox. This guy named Marshall Goldsmith, he's actually much more of a leader, a thought leader, if you will. And he kind of started thinking, you know what, I can't stick around on Earth the whole time, and I would love to impart like what I've known and coached CEOs for his whole life. I want to pass that on to somewhere. He actually built a whole AI with a team around all of his kind of thought, all of his writings and stuff. And so that's freely available at marshallgoldsmith.ai. And it'd be cool, like to see these kind of repositories of knowledge like continue to evolve like this. So just look out for that. Okay, the 4-letter word. Do we always test, guys? We always test, right? Or do we test in production? Anyway, so hopefully we're going to be able to get relax a little bit more, with our AI tools. So at my shop, we really promote a culture of doing good peer reviews. These are not like, I'm going to beat you up and shame you over your code. We always have this culture of like, how do we create a culture of learning from each other? So before you send a PR in to a leader, using newer tools and GitHub, you're actually able to get some code review, guidance actually from a bot, which is kind of cool. So that's totally awesome. It's important though to, as a developer, to know that you have to like set things up well. So this is a pattern that we teach in my work called Clean Architecture. It's from Steve Ardalis, Stephen Smith Ardalis is his name. But you separate your kind of like work into like making a core library which has minimal dependencies. Under infrastructure, you have dependencies like, what database are you writing to, what specific code strategies are you using in Unity, all those things. Your gnarly logic belongs in core, and it allows you to write unit tests. So if you set up your solution in that sort of way, you can do things like this, like walk up to your Copilot tool, write a unit test for this class, and it'll halfway do a halfway decent job, or whatnot. So again, for the most part, I've gained a lot of efficiencies from this. Helped me keep my code coverage higher. We don't shoot for 100% code coverage in our shops. We just like try to get good enough. So as we're changing our software under stress, we have these robots kind of come along and beating up our software, and hopefully helping us to relax a little bit more, because we're kind of tracking testing rapidly. So these tools can do more traditional test cases sort of stuff. We can see other places where testing tools, like ChatGPT, can create test data and that sort of thing. So hopefully you're kind of seeing that there's a lot of cool use cases for using AI tools in the test realm. But again, we want to make sure that we kind of align with the rest of the people on Stack Overflow, that we don't overly trust these tools, and we are responsible. So the call to action here really is just as we're creators, respecting intellectual property of creators, respecting our clients' privacy, constructing systems in manners that humans still feel command of the quality of outputs, and it's not just raw AI stuff. Again, we don't trust the AI, right? So I think those are all calls to action that we have as developers to be responsible developers. Again, I think leaving on the top principle of the Agile movement, people over processes and tools. I think it's the closing question I asked that we think about in closing, how do we create a more profound community and opportunity by augmenting human creativity? So with that, have any questions? We can close with questions.
Have you seen any tools or capabilities yet around end-to-end testing in AI?
In terms of, I guess from a pragmatism point of view, going back to this point of view, I'm more passionate about having good unit tests and integration tests, testing through the UI. My experience has been brittle because you can just change a very subtle thing and then all of a sudden your Selenium tests are right? I think as data engineers, we want to protect the data more, and I can accomplish that with unit tests and integration tests.
Awesome, thank you.
Good question, though. I'm just kind of curious, are there other kind of tools that you guys are passionate about in planning or testing? I'm curious about what you guys think.
What if you had nothing?
That's still good. I guess, where are you going with that question, I guess?
Where would you start if you had nothing? If there's no testing culture, if there is no culture of engineering excellence, how do you start to build that up so that you can start?
Oh, got it. Great question. My personality tends to be one of lead by example. So I really appreciate, thought leaders like Misko. I can't remember his last name. Misko Haverty. He was the actual creator of Angular. He has some really good older tech talks at Google where they're called the Clean Code Talks at Google, and you can find that on YouTube. They are written, they're spoken in a very tech agnostic way, and it teaches a lot of the Agile, engineering kind of principles of at least doing true unit tests, true integration tests, and I feel like you can start there. The second thing would be a little bit more economic, just saying, going to your business organization and just kind of looking at the economics of what is it costs a developer to manually test things versus having a QA team member be a part of the family. And that spreadsheet will show that there's an economic benefit there. So those would be my two things: lead by example from where you can stand, and the second would be work with your business, look at the spreadsheet, hey, if we did have a QA person on, you could definitely prove a business benefit. Happy to talk more afterwards then, if you have specifics. Very cool. Thank you, everyone. And we'll connect with anyone back at the Google table if you want to chat more.
That was great.